Welcome to Charmed Life, a radio show discussing spirituality, magic, and the unconditional love of the universe. Thanks for tuning in. And I am your host, Tricia Carr. I am so blessed to be here with you today, and it is my intention to bless you, to love you. And at this time, I do welcome Spirit, the unconditional love of the universe, the essence of God energy, of Creator energy, to flow through me and to connect with your God energy. Amen, and so it is. I want to share with you just a couple of things before I get into my topic today, which is relationships. Relationships for the spiritual seeker, the empath. And, that's basically relationships for every single one of us because we are spirit being expressed as physical form. But I want to tell you about a few things that I have going on. First of all, I have a class this coming Sunday. So today is, what is it, Kurt? It is January 13th. Thank you. Thank you very much. Producer Kurt here in the house, making things look good and sound good. All right, so yes, January 13th, 2019 right now. And starting at this time, I will be having classes that I'm teaching live in Burbank, California. So if you are in Southern California or in Los Angeles, I would love it for you to go ahead and hit me up on my website. You can fill out the contact form. You can also just join my newsletter, and that will keep you abreast of the classes. And so this coming Sunday, the 20th at 2:30 p.m., there are still spots open. It's a very small class actually that is being offered, but it is for psychic and mediumship development. So it's for all levels of development and experiencing your own intuitive abilities, reading abilities, healing, whatever it is. And it is a class where we actually practice, but I do teach. We have questions and answers to clear up those filters, as I say, so we could become more natural. And so do go check it out on my website. And actually on my website under Mystic Arts Academy, if you go to work with me, then Mystic Arts Academy, you'll find many different opportunities for learning. There are live offerings that will be scheduled coming up. Whether it's in my Patreon community, patreon.com/Tricia Carr, where I'm offering an Archangels and Universal Law class currently, as well as on-demand classes like my Animal Communication class program. It's really a comprehensive program with a live community involved attached to that program. And also, for example, I have the Intuitive Intensive, the 2019 Intuitive Intensive, just to tease that. It's not quite available yet. We're going to be opening that up for registration in about a week, maybe less. It's the program that I teach in collaboration with Crystal Ann Compton, amazing spiritual teacher and mentor, and she is just amazing. You hear me talk about her all the time if you're a Charmed Life listener, because she is also the founder of the Lightworkers Lab, an online spiritual community of which I am a teacher and a guide. So go find the Lightworkers Lab on Facebook if you would like a spiritual community, and just go check out my website for these different offerings that I have of teaching as well as my one-on-one services. All right, having said that, I'm really excited to talk about a very important topic, and that is relationships. Part of the reason that I was prompted to, or inspired to speak about this, is because of the folks that reach out to me, or that I would say Spirit brings into my experience to witness, as well as my own personal experiences, of course. One of those kinds of messages, the way it came through, was through people who are feeling very sensitive, very empathic, and experiencing this state as though it is a weakness or something that makes them feel overwhelmed or threatened, perhaps incapable of being in either one-on-one relationships or even situations. And so there is a bit of an adjustment there that I think that would be very helpful to observe, and that is understanding what relationships are and understanding what our role is in relationships. So let's just break it way down to that, primarily speaking. First of all, when I say relationships, we can consider this any experience that you as an individual are having with something else. So this could be your relationship with yourself, because we do think of ourselves from two perspectives. How I think of myself, there are two subjects in that statement there. And that is actually being able to have the separate experience where we observe ourselves, where we are able to observe our own habits and patterns, is a moment of enlightenment. Because as we observe a habit and a pattern, perhaps one that is not serving us, then we actually take the position of the consciousness, the space of the pure creator. So that is one kind of way that we can understand what a relationship is. Another perspective of a relationship is our relationships with others, other humans. So it could be our romantic partnerships, it could be our friendships, our family, the people that we work with, and it can also be events, anything that we kind of observe as an experience, anything that we perceive outside of ourselves. And so with the highly empathic person, they'll be like, I can't go into crowds because I'm always just picking up all of the energies. What's important to realize in that experience in order to move forward to something that is empowered is that you are empowered, is that you aren't made poorly, that you aren't made broken, so that you are a sponge that has absolutely no free will in the experience. So understanding that you have free will in your experiences or your relationships is fundamental to actually becoming empowered in them and to stopping patterns and those habits and to heal any disenfranchisement, which disenfranchisement means that you feel as though you are incapable of being successful in the context of this universe or this time-space reality or this society or the political climate, whatever it is, or the history of your particular group. And that's not to say that those aren't challenges, but those challenges and those events and perceptions that are being brought forward to you are also relationships. And so that's sort of the really broad view of what relationships are, what we mean by relationships. Now, I want to say that what our role is in relationships in absolutely every single one of these situations, it can really be distilled down to what the individual's role is. As A Course in Miracles says, it is an assignment from God. Now, another way to look at that, if you are uncomfortable with the word God, is that it is an assignment from your soul. We understand that how energy functions, it determines that we cannot experience anything unless we have a matching frequency with it. So a relationship is a connection of two different frequencies. However, they're coming together on one frequency. And so it is part your original frequency and part theirs. And energy can only be in the space of like energy. Therefore, if you are attracting, as we say, or you are aligning with certain experiences, then your soul or your God essence, assigned it to you, brought it forward to you, including the challenges, including the wonderful things. And the reason we may be having a pattern of challenges is because we're having a pattern of a frequency. Just being able to observe that simple truth, then we can actually start to understand how to evolve that truth, evolve the outward experience of it. So evolve the relationships that we are experiencing. Because you see, our soul or God is not going to let us out of our homework. It just can't. It's impossible. We have free will, so we can't be released of what we are creating. We create it from our frequency. We create it from our thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. And we bring that like frequency to us. And so that is the assignment that we cannot be excused from. So how do we actually complete the assignment from the soul or the assignment from God and get an A on it and be able to graduate to the next kind, the next level of relationship? Well, to distill that down simply is that if it is an assignment from a benevolent God or the purity of your soul, which is that creator essence or that God essence, then we understand that it is a benevolent assignment. Therefore, the outcome, the questions that are being asked in that assignment of you are to be more benevolent, to be more loving. So your role, my role in every single relationship is to love more, to be a blessing, to be the absolute purest and highest possible form of God energy in that relationship. So that does mean, let's take for example, so as a woman, I have I've inherited an energy of challenges, right? Women, we come from a history, our mothers, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, and the ancestral timeline behind us, that energy was passed down of mistreatment, of struggle, of challenge, of our voices being suppressed and oppressed. And we still have, even though it's much better than it was, we still have the energy of that, and it probably still isn't equal. I mean, there are certain kinds of statistics we can look at to say it's not equal, that women earn, I don't know, probably like 70, maybe even, I don't know how much it is, 78 cents to the dollar compared to a man. I have no idea what it is, actually. So those kinds of, for the exact same work, all possible contexts being equal. And so we clearly have inherited some of that energy. We've inherited that challenge. And that is the context of being in this group as a woman, that there's a challenge. And of course, everyone has these challenging contexts, some more, some greater than others. But of course, that is not something that is subjective. We can't really know the heart of a man or know someone else's experience. So as a woman, I've inherited this. So this is a challenge, and this challenge is actually a relationship. So my role in the relationship of the challenge of being a woman, all of the shadow aspects, all of the misogyny, even the oppression and the assault that have been experienced simply for the fact that I am a woman. My job is to actually love that challenge, to allow love to flow through me so that it can be healed. And that seems really curious, doesn't it? How do I love a challenge? If I've just put into that challenge something like assault against women, how can that be loved? Well, how that can actually be loved, it starts with the very nature, again, of how energy works. And that is to be able to love yourself more wholly. This is what we learn from the Golden Rule, which is what we call that one principle, that tenet, that is actually expressed in absolutely every single major religion. And there are a couple of ways that it's stated in the Bible, one being to love your neighbor as yourself. You see, the degree to which we are experiencing challenges or rewards, these are direct reflections, these are direct emittance from our own frequency. So in our relationships, we are showing ourselves, our soul or God is showing us exactly what is going on inside of us. Now, we can also think of it on the lighter side, if it is an assignment, the challenge that I brought into this life, I have in this experience of, the misogyny or the oppression of women. Well, then this was assigned to me, again, assuming that we have a benevolent soul essence or God essence, then we know that this is because we are believed in, because our soul knows that we are up to the challenge. So this is an empowered way to look at that. If I am able to have this challenge in my life, it is because my soul knows that I am powerful enough to help heal it, along with the many other who would be in that group, in this example of it being a challenge of a collective. Well, that's wonderful, isn't it? So that takes us out of the victim seat. Just opening your belief up to the fact that I am in this challenge because my soul or my God knows that I am capable of contributing healing to it. And the place you start is with healing yourself, loving yourself. Now, it is important to realize, too, that there is a distinction between truly deeply loving yourself and accepting yourself and arrogance, of course, or bypassing real work and forcing your will into a situation or past a particular kind of work. And what I mean by that is if I were to take the consideration that this challenge of being a woman is in my life and that I need to love and misuse the word love myself to heal it, then I would be maybe not getting into my own issues, looking deep into myself, seeing where the wounds are and where I need to be my own perfect parent and love myself. Rather, I am using my will to force past that kind of work and projecting that pain without consciousness onto others who would be the representation in my mind of that challenge. This actually can show up sometimes as activism that is not truly healing. Under the guise, I should say, activism in its pure form is healing, but under the guise of activism, sometimes we have aggression and we have blame, shame, guilt, and judgment. Blame, shame, guilt, and judgment is not the way that we heal. So under the guise of activism, we could be harming ourselves even more because we haven't gone in and lovingly nurtured our own wounds before we started moving forward to genuinely shine our light to help heal the ignorance and to serve in compassion the places where compassion was missing. Because for your brother or your sister to be creating assault toward you, they have to be assaulting themselves first because we are all one. The Bible actually says, when the Bible says that there is only one begotten Son of God, in Christian religion and dogma, this is misunderstood to think that somehow projected upon an individual human being. But the truth is that one and only begotten Son, or that one and only child of God, is every single one of us. Every human, every element of life, every living element, every expression of energy is collectively the one and only begotten Son of God. So you see, in order for someone to create assault upon another, they must first be assaulting themselves that deeply, to that same degree. I actually had a powerful experience of that just yesterday. I woke up in the morning and one of my birds, named Francis, had passed away. And of course, I love him very much. And so I went into personal session. I went into meditation, into my spiritual healing and connection, because I wanted to make any amends that were necessary for me to learn from this experience or this relationship. Anything that I had made an error or somehow abandoned my responsibilities, abandoned my deeper awareness. I wanted to atone. Atoning meaning not something that's like punishment. I wanted to move from this space of feeling guilty, because guilt isn't the place to stay. Guilt is calling you to the beginning of the work. And so I know guilt is pre-healing, and I wanted to get to the place of healing. And so I went into my session, and the first contact that I had in this experience was from my cat who had passed, how old am I? He passed 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago. His name is Aramis, and I've talked about him on Charmed Life before. I've talked about his passing. And Aramis came through to me, so this is a mediumistic experience, his consciousness, and came in, and this visitation was more visceral than it's been in a long time for me to experience Aramis. I also call him Ami. And so I experienced Aramis. His energy was expressed in a more particular way than it is a lot of other times. A lot of other times I feel his love in my heart, or I call to mind his essence. It felt as though his energetic body, his astral body, everything except for his physical body were there with me and actually sitting on my lap and taking care of me and loving me. And so he brought me into the experience of looking at what I needed to understand from this lesson of the relationship, the ending of the relationship, the physical relationship with Francis, the bird who had passed. And Ami was, I guess, ministering to me and, in a very general way. And so I started to ask him specific questions and say, how do I improve upon the situation? Is there something that I need to look at? And so Aramis basically turned me to Francis and the other birds in my experience who I've loved very, very much, who have passed on, my other bird family members. And they actually all came together, and again, in a more particular yet spiritual expression than I've been experiencing lately with them. And each of them greeted me and, blessed me, and I felt their love very much and connected with them on love. They were all kind of sitting around me, kind of like, that zippity-doo-dah song. We're like a Dr. Dolittle, and this is all in my spiritual space and on the plane of spirit. And so I was asking details about how to improve any situation, and because I considered, I have 4 birds still, and I considered, if I'm missing something, is it best for these birds who I have now for me to rehome them and give them to someone else? I wanted to have absolutely I wanted to empty myself out and find a way to be the greatest blessing and to love them the most. And that actually didn't feel right for them. And so my birds in spirit told me, no, the answer isn't for you to become less of a bird person or to distance yourself from the relationship with these or any other birds you would love. It's actually for you to become more of a bird person and to find ways to enhance that. And so I said to them, well, obviously I need to set up certain situations, so that requires me to give myself permission to spend that time, and perhaps it's even money to be able to set up a different kind of living situation for them and for me to be able to experience our relationship. And so those are resources, basically, time and maybe money. And I said, so I need to do that, and obviously I can call upon the blessings of the universe to facilitate that. I know that the universe is always conspiring for my success and facilitating me to be a blessing as well. And so finally I said to my birds, I said, in your lives, in your physical lives, if there were ways that I had failed you, I want to make amends and I want to say I'm sorry. And then I graciously learn those lessons so that I can continue to move forward in the relationships with you now and also with the other birds, cats, and humans and every other relationship in this experience. But I am sorry, and I would like to make those amends. And like as a chorus, these birds, they all said to me, if you ever failed us, it is because you failed yourself first. And so if I didn't have time to spend with my birds, that is because I did not give myself time to do something that is really important to me. I didn't give myself space to love more deeply and to receive and to give of love. So, what this comes down to be able to have the frequency that best facilitates evolution, enlightenment, and you to be the blessing upon the relationships in your life. It comes down to an examination of your habits. So a habit is, according to Dr. Joe Dispenza, a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that is acquired from frequent repetition. You see, we want our habits in our relationships. That would be an expression, that's another way to say frequency, honestly. Those habits, it is that, because our frequency is the sum total of our thoughts and emotions, which then are expressed as behaviors. And so when we have all the habits that we have, they essentially become like a software program. that is running automatically. You know, we're here in a studio and we have all kinds of software running, and they're automatically just running the tasks that we need them to run. You know, Curtis now sitting back there and he's just watching because he set up all the software and it's just cooking. It's just doing its thing, and he's not having to like make all of the things fire. And so that's what we have. These actually, technology is a model of what we are, technologically speaking, how our mind and our energy works. So we want to be able to install programs that facilitate our highest good, and that highest good being our assignments being completed so that we can continue to evolve. Being able to be the love and the light in whatever relationship is presented to us. So having the correct or the most beneficial program running would mean that we were in our right mind. In A Course in Miracles, it says something like that our job here in this experience is to, I'm totally paraphrasing, is to think like God. And now, God is the creator essence, the pure potential, but it's unconditional love. And so thinking like God is essentially aligning yourself with your higher self, or aligning yourself with the will of God, will being thought. So it would mean that we want to be in our right mind, or the aligned mind. See, being in the right mind, your right mind, as opposed to your wrong mind or your misaligned experience, would be to be in the right mind means to have an extended heart, to be having loving thoughts, which would have to start with your loving thoughts about yourself, and then extend that out, allow that to be the overflow to the relationships that are assigned to you. So take it back to that experience of the very sensitive person, an empath, being in a situation where they feel victimized, they feel as though they're sponging, and they feel as though they are overwhelmed and incapable of controlling what they are experiencing inside of themselves, meaning I'm identifying to other thoughts and emotions. Well, that's a belief inside the self that you're incapable of holding your own space of love and light. So that would be in the wrong mind. Now, there's no judgment here. It's to be able to observe that pattern again is to awaken, because you become identified with the consciousness, the conscious space, the pure consciousness, or the God mind, the right mind, to see what the pattern is. And now you're empowered and you're capable of changing that. And there you go. And that is the life experience. Now, to be in the wrong mind would be to be closed, to have your heart guarded by defense mechanisms, and then therefore we actually project rather than connect. And so that would be the experience of, under the guise of activism, actually harming others, judging, blaming, and shaming others. That would be guarding your heart, cutting off a connection, and then projecting unconsciously from your own wounded space, rather than turning that energy in to love and loving your own wounds so that they become a source of inspiration, of knowing, of compassion. If you've gone down a road of healing and you are from the perspective of healing from it, then the person who is behind you on that road, you can help to be a guiding light to them. So that is what our wounds are for. Even in physiologically speaking, if we have a bone break, that bone actually, when it heals, becomes stronger in that area. It becomes more calcified. And so that is a model for exactly who we are. Being able to get into those spaces where we need more love facilitates us to become stronger and more fortified, so we can show that to others in our relationships and to be able to ace those assignments. Get on to the next one. Now, sometimes we come to a part of a relationship where the maximum growth opportunity has actually run its course to where that we are in physical proximity with that person. So the reason I say physical proximity is because, I have ex-boyfriends or something. I've been married. I've been with my husband, I should say, for 14 and a half years. I've been married for almost 7. But I have exes in my past, along my romantic expression in this life, who I can still call to mind, and I'm actually still responding to those relationships. More importantly, I'm responding to who I was in those relationships. And if I can see it that way, who was I in that relationship, then I can actually learn from it. But that relationship still exists beside, if we're talking about the space of non-physical, because in spirit or in non-physical, in the highest perspective of the universe, there is no such thing as time and space. It is timeless, it is fluid. It is even greater than fluidity. It is all, it is one, it is here and now. So relationships never truly end, but our physical proximity with a certain form of a relationship, just like my relationship with my bird Francis, who passed yesterday, our physical relationship is ceasing or changing. I mean, it's changing because his body, his physical form, even though it's disconnected from in a visceral way from the energy or the spirit consciousness, his body will be transmuted as it goes into the earth. And I'm still experiencing the earth, and my body is still one with the earth as well. So it shifts, and that relationship has now expired in that form. And so that can happen in our relationships now. The times that it might be time to end a romantic relationship, a friendship, or move on from a specific kind of professional relationship. And sometimes when we get to the end, if we're a little confused about why we're not experiencing something different, we could have reached the maximum capacity for what we are going to do with one another in that form. And so it could be time to move on. And when that happens, sometimes we're looping and we keep thinking, feeling, and behaving in the exact same way. And the best thing to do is actually part ways and change the form of the relationship so that you can move on to the next one. I don't know about you guys, but when I was dating, when I ended a relationship with a person, I would realize that the little bit of downtime I had when I was single, there was I could really see it was like a lot of momentum for what I had learned in that previous relationship, that at the end felt like really heavy and stuck, like I thought I was learning these lessons. But then when I finally ended the relationship, the little time alone, it was like boom, 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 clarity on all that stuff. And then when I started a new relationship, it was like, oh, and now I'm actually putting all of those lessons into practice in a new way. So just wanted to point that out, that being able to love someone else sometimes is parting from them. And sometimes the best thing you can do, I actually just experienced a kind of breakup this past week too, because I came to realize that I hadn't been owning my truth in a lot of areas of that relationship. I had been a bit shy about it. I had observed it, but I had sort of tucked it away. And I was allowing this other person to give their highest self to me. So you see, my error there was to abandon my own needs and my own truth and the way that I could love myself. And then that set a stage for this person to not love me because I wasn't loving myself first. Again, back to the golden rule. We love others as we love ourselves. In order for me to let someone know how they can appropriately love me, I must first be clear on that myself and have that practice in place. So let's say that you are in a difficult romantic relationship and you end that relationship. Sometimes when it gets to a certain part of the challenge, we could end that relationship and we end it before the lessons are fully learned. As opposed to, like I said, the lessons seem to start looping. We're in the same place of them, and it's time to peacefully end the relationship. The way to know this is when you feel very peace, you may feel grave, and you may actually feel a bit melancholy and sad still because something is parting, something is changing. But when it's time, you actually feel a profound kind of peace and a kind of clarity, even if the work is difficult to do. Telling someone that we need to part ways can be, it's something that you come to with a lot of peace. And even if there could be drama in the situation, which I've experienced before, where I ended a relationship and it was dramatic in that there were physical things that were entwined, you know what I mean? Like it could be if you live together or if you're business partners, the things that you have to undo in order for the ties to be severed. But still, as I'm going through those experiences, I still feel empowered. I feel a kind of clarity, and even if it is a melancholy, bittersweet kind of clarity. So that is one way that we are ending or moving through a relationship in a right-minded way. Now, a model of a wrong-minded way is when we do it out of frustration or blame or judgment. See, there's a difference between, like, for example, the breakup that I'm referring to. I was looking at the facts of things to where, in this situations, let's say where a person actually even lied to you and deceived you, I could look at that, and we've all been in those many times, and I could say, okay, so I allowed you to deceive me all these times. And when I start to open that up, if that's happened in a relationship, all of a sudden these other things, you know how this is, like these other areas where I'm like, I allowed them to deceive me. And then other situations start to come to your remembrance. Like, look, you hid this one away. This was an area where neither one of you were being honest. Me not being honest with myself, and also not with them. Because if you allow someone to deceive you, then you are also deceiving them. Because you're saying, I'm going to pretend like I believe that from you. And that's a lie. And that's not you serving them. So there is no victim in a situation. Even if we say, you lied to me, I set up a vibration or a context in which I facilitated that. And so this is how the soul is actually showing us what lessons we're meant to learn. So in the situations where someone has there's been deception, let's just say that. There's been deception. When you confront the fact that there is deception, when it's time to move on is when you actually just feel discerning, where you say, well, this was presented to me, these words were presented to me, and they were untrue. But I allowed them to be the thing that moved us from that situation. So I facilitated the deception. I accepted the lie or whatever it is. And I didn't do my work in order for me to be empowered enough to say, well, there's clearly something wrong in this relationship if deception is being presented. And so you come to a place of discernment rather than judgment. But when you're feeling victimized and judgmental, and see, you can have things have gone wrong and you can have been assaulted, but when you are actually in a place of empowerment and right-mindedness, then you are able to make amends with yourself as well as the other. Present it to them. It's not your job to maybe kiss and hug goodbye. That's not the point. But you can say with empowerment, this has occurred, and I see the lessons I'm meant to learn. I see how I'm supposed to grow in this situation and to love myself enough so that my truth can be identified with in every situation. That I am able to hold the space for someone to treat me correctly and for me to vibrate that correct way to treat me to the person so that frequency is offered. And either we then misalign or we align. That's, again, just how energy works. So if you are taking that model of a romantic relationship that's not going well, if you're still in the space of feeling victimized, if you're still in the space of feeling judgmental rather than a bit more objectively discerning, see, when we're discerning, we bring ourselves into the equation and we say, how did we relate to one another? If you're still in that place, then you need to do some more inner work before you just abandon the lesson that's presented to you. Well, you could do whatever you want, but let's say if you are in the place of blame, shame, judgment, frustration, and victimization, if you get out of that relationship right then, you haven't finished that lesson yet. You will pick it up where you left off. And it might be even more frustrating because you deceived yourself then. You said this person was the reason. And now it's this person too. This person's a new reason and the same kind of stuff. I feel the same, only a different color of the same. And you're bypassing the part of the relationship, which is the only thing that you can do anything about, and that's you. That's the only way that you can actually shift this. And sometimes it creates a lot of anxiety or depression to look into this stuff. And if you are in a situation where you're feeling that blame, shame, guilt, frustration, and you feel victimized, It doesn't have to take a lot of time, but you want to give yourself some space to be able to get into that stuff. And the portal to being able to have that discernment is to look at you. Now you can take what they did to me and shift that around to observe what you allowed to be done and what context you facilitated for that. If someone lied to you, you accepted that lie. And when you get to discernment, you can see that there was in your energy something that facilitated that. So now, basically, there are three types of relationships or assignments. And we could look at them as some that are very passive, casual, and those could be as simple as the people that you meet on the street or that you're driving next to in cars or the barista at the coffee shop. There are the more mid-range ones, which are the friendships that may be temporary or even colleagues, or perhaps the barista that you chat with because you visit that coffee shop for 3 years and you know each other by name. Those are kind of in the range of mid-range. And then there are the lifelong assignments. And those could be family, whether you have an actual physical relationship with them or you just have a biological relationship with them, partners, people that you have children with. You can divorce someone, but if you have a child with them, they're always your family. And those kinds of really long-term relationships. Your role in each of these types of scenarios is to be a blessing, is to love them. So in the more passive ones, as you're just driving along on the freeway or on the road, having a present and loving frequency actually does facilitate the flow of love and serves the relationship assignments that are all around you. If you were non-present, if you were frustrated and having a wrong-minded frequency, then yeah, you could actually make a mistake. You could be going too fast or slow. You could have a car accident, just to make it a bit more demonstrative. But even when nothing happens, your frequency, the way that you are loving yourself, therefore others, is actually how you are completing your assignment that day, that time. So deep presence is actually the only way that we can be in observation, be in that constant state of enlightenment and evolution, to be observing our patterns. And so some things that, the ways to be able to accomplish this are with it, obviously in our spiritual time, are meditation being the cornerstone of being in your own God essence. And then, of course, being able to have a prayer and affirmation, gratitude practice. These are all the same kind of thing, an active practice of being a blessing. So one thing you can do, I've heard Marianne Williamson say that whatever you're going to do when you're going to go out into the world, pray and send your love before you. You see, to send your love before you, you actually have to receive love from the source of love. And so you become identified with love. And this is a distinction from the martyr syndrome, where we give of ourselves without receiving at all, and then we become a vacuum of need in the experience. That would be the person who identifies as the empath or the highly sensitive who is incapable of being a blessing. I've been there, and I am there sometimes. We all are. So it's not a place of judgment. This is just, again, observing any patterns so that we can find the position of empowerment and the space to be able to become enlightened and evolved in it. So sending your love before you. Pray that you may be a blessing. This is one of the 4 agreements in that book, The 4 Agreements. I am only in this room to be a blessing. I'm only in this relationship to be a blessing. I am only experiencing this challenge of being an oppressed woman to be a blessing. I am only in this partnership with this person where I experience that I am being codependent and they are being narcissistic. I am only in this identity, in this relationship, these roles that have been cast that I accepted, to be a blessing. Because if I grow through that frequency, then that will be sent through that energetic frequency to the other person. And they will be changed in one way or another. Of course, it is their choice. But you certainly will be vibrating above whatever that challenge is. And you're vibrating above it, then actually allows it to become smaller if it is a challenge in this time-space reality. Because you're no longer matching and adding frequency to it by your identity to it. And this goes for any relationship that we have. In certain partnerships or certain friendships, let's say, it sometimes is that the energy just sort of starts to fade between you. And there might need to be a loving parting or not. And this is all okay. When things happen from a place of that position of discernment and empowerment, even if we're assessing that there are things that were handled incorrectly, then we must be in the position of our own responsibility in it, our ability to respond, which is what responsibility really breaks down to. That's the responsibility we have in any relationship, our ability to respond. If someone is being aggressive or oppressive, then we have an ability to respond. In order to take up that mantle and that position, we have to actually love ourselves enough to allow ourselves to have that ability to respond. You do have it. Otherwise, your soul wouldn't have brought you into that experience. And so, the parting words I would like to leave you with are, you are here to be a blessing. You are here to allow love to flow through you for yourself and for everyone in the experience who would be involved or touched in all time and space and above and beyond. And you have that ability to respond in a loving manner, to first send blessing, to first send love. And that comes in all shades. But it definitely is a place of stability and peace when we feel it. And so thank you so much for listening today. And thank you to my sweet animals who blessed this experience, brought me the lessons that they brought. Just out of curiosity, I'm sure you guys may be curious. Francis, my bird, he passed because he had an infection. And I actually had been sensing it for a while, but when I would tap in with him, it wasn't really connecting. And I wondered if I should take him to the vet. But as I asked and I felt into it, see, this is a place where I could have done that, but it may have just traumatized him more. And I've been in that experience where, there's a choice to be made. And sometimes, you can't really go wrong with it. Essentially, he was going to pass when he did. He shared with me that there were some things he was trying out in this lifetime, and it kind of had a lot of dynamism to it, that he realized that there were some things about being a wild bird that he really appreciated, that he wouldn't experience as being a domesticated bird. But he preferred overall the set of what is offered as a domestic bird in this experience over being a wild bird, a wild parakeet. He's a parakeet. And there were things that he even requested of me, like having more birds in his experience that he appreciated. But then at the same time, he was like, it wasn't quite enough birds. That's what I was thinking, because, if I were wild and in a flock, there'd be a lot more birds. And yet it was still, I felt in competition a little bit with some of these birds. He was very kind, but he was kind of a bit of a ruler as well of the roost. And so what was interesting is that the infection was kind of concealed from me to an extent, where I thought that he wasn't doing well, but then as I questioned into it, I would get the opposite information. And then 2 nights before he passed, he came to me in a dream, but he was at peace. So he was still alive, but he came to me in a dream and he was wanting to connect with me. And then I understood when I did wake up 2 nights later that he had passed, that he was just telling me goodbye and that the time was coming and the choice had been made. But I can learn from it, and I am learning from it. And that is that, I'm going to become more of a bird person and be okay with my presence. That's what I learned from it. He has choices in it, and I want to be even more okay with how present I am with all of my relationships, including my birds and my animal loved ones. And so I'm here for you, sending you my love and sending you a blessing. And I hope you'll join us again next time. By the way, I want to tell you that the next episode, next week, if you watch live, I have as an in-studio guest Daryl Anka, who is the channel of Bashar, six-dimensional extraterrestrial Essassani, amazing speaker. He's also a producer and a writer and a filmmaker. So Daryl will be here next week. I hope you will catch it. You can watch it live on YouTube, my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Tricia Carr. You can also actually just go to my website to where my podcast and media page is, and there's an embed there for you to be able to watch it live, or on Facebook and in the Lightworkers Lab if you're a member there. It's all broadcast live there, or you can watch the replays on YouTube or listen on any podcast feed by subscribing to Charmed Life with Tricia Carr. And that's all I have for you this episode. Thank you for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.